You know, when you think of Paul Bunyan, you probably picture that big, cheerful lumberjack from the stories we all heard as kids. A friendly giant, right? Well, what if that whole story is just a cover for something way more intense? We're going to pull back the curtain on the Paul Bunyan myth and show you how it might just be a story about a nation's will to power.
Okay, this slide really gets right to the point. On one side, you've got the gentle giant we all know. But on the other, well, that's a much darker take. The argument is that Bunyan isn't a person. He's the living symbol of America's brutal, unstoppable drive to conquer an entire continent. The idea here is that this isn't just a tall tale. It's basically a blueprint for the national psyche.
So the first thing we have to do is stop thinking of Paul Bunyan as a character. Instead, think of him as an idea. He's the personification of manifest destiny, that raw psychological force. He represents the mindset that the continent wasn't something to live with, but something to be completely dominated and remade from scratch.
And this is where his size becomes so important. It's not just for show, it's a metaphor. His impossible scale is what justifies an ambition so massive, like settling a whole continent, that it feels like it has the right to change everything in its path. It's a justification for sheer, overwhelming scale.
So, how does a nation pull that off? How do you justify that kind of ambition? Well, it's all in the tools. So let's take a closer look at Bunyan's famous gear. Not as simple tools, but as what this source calls weapons of creation.
Right, the axe and the ox. In the kid's story, they're just props, right? Things to help a big guy do a big job. But this interpretation sees them as something else entirely. They actually symbolize the two massive forces that drove American expansion: raw industrial power and the natural world itself. And that brings up a really important question. If they're not just tools, what exactly are they symbols of? What kind of new power do they represent to this young, hungry nation? And the answer, as we'll see, is pretty fascinating. It's about harnessing both industry and nature. Okay, first up, the axe. This isn't just for chopping wood. Think of it as an instrument of terraforming. It's a symbol of the brutal, jaw-dropping efficiency of the Industrial Revolution. A power that could clear ancient forests not just for lumber, but to literally erase the world that was there and make way for a new one.
And then you have Babe. Why a blue ox? Well, Babe is supposed to be nature itself, this immense, wild power. But here's the key. It's been tamed. It's all the awesome force of the natural world captured and forced to work for human ambition. Suddenly, nature isn't an obstacle anymore. It's an engine.
So Bunyan's got his weapons. Now he gets to work carving up a continent. But in this version of the story, the act of creation is actually pretty destructive. His most famous accomplishments get reimagined as these violent, almost careless transformations of the land. And this slide just boils it down into this grimly simple three-step formula. Step 1, you find the untamed wilderness. Step 2, you hit it with overwhelming, unstoppable force. And then, the most important step of all, no matter what you've done, no matter what scars you've left, you just call the result progress. Let's look at some actual examples from the myths. The Grand Canyon? In this telling, it's not a natural wonder. It's a permanent scar that Bunyan left when he carelessly dragged his axe. Minnesota's 10,000 lakes? They're just the puddles left behind in his and Babe's footprints. Collateral damage. Even the Great Lakes get reframed as nature being totally re-engineered for industrial purposes. Just a giant watering hole for Babe. And all of this leads to a really powerful conclusion. The famous landmarks in the Paul Bunyan stories aren't monuments to creation. They're the debris, the rubble left behind by a force that only cared about moving forward.
So, let's tie this all together. What does this darker version of Paul Bunyan really tell us about the American psyche? Well, the argument is that it's the perfect myth for a nation's will to power, its absolute, undeniable drive to impose its vision on the world.
Yeah, when you look at it through this lens, that friendly giant story completely changes. It becomes a story about celebrating the raw, unapologetic ambition of westward expansion. It points to this deep psychological need we have to call domination an act of creation. It's a myth that puts industrial power above nature and basically cheers on that relentless and, yeah, sometimes destructive American drive. And here's the ultimate takeaway. In this story, Paul Bunyan isn't actually the hero. The real hero of the story is the will to power itself, that pure, unapologetic drive to dominate, to build, and to conquer, no matter what it costs. So, if a simple kid's story can hide all of that, it kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on, doesn't it? What other stories, what other myths do we still tell ourselves today to justify our own ambitions?